For nearly 100 years, World Horse Welfare's mission has been to work with horses, horse owners, communities, organizations and governments to improve welfare standards and stamp out suffering in the UK and worldwide. We work to improve the lives of all horses, no matter what their role is in society. We help and work with horses in need, and any kind of horse can be a horse in need, sport and leisure horses, and horses used in work and production. We strive to improve welfare by strengthening the horse-human partnership. We use a combination of care, research, education and influence to relieve and prevent suffering, identify and address the root causes of problems, and change policies and practices so that horses are better protected, no matter how we use them. Traditionally, it was said that horses could be used, but never be abused. But what use is acceptable, and what do we mean by abuse? Sometimes the distinction between use and abuse is black and white, but often, and increasingly, it appears in shades of grey. Some believe that any use of a horse is, by definition, abuse, while others believe they have high standards of horsemanship, when in reality the science would often prove this is far from true. Today, we will explore what is abuse and what we need to do to prevent it. Violence, cruelty or deliberate neglect are obvious abuse. But what if it stems from ignorance? Is it abuse if we don't know it's abuse? How can we compare our methods of managing and training our horses with someone who adopts a different approach? Who's right and who's wrong? In parts of the world where horses are leisure animals, does using a horse for work count as abuse? Some traditional practices are incompatible with good welfare, but they are considered acceptable among people who have never known any other way to keep a horse. Are these owners guilty of abuse, or of just not having knowledge or access to the services we all take for granted? And when we use horses for production, for their meat, milk or hormones for medicines, is this acceptable use or abuse? And how does this debate impact the horses we use for sport and leisure? Again, some traditional practices are increasingly being questioned, and public outrage can erupt when we deviate from some unwritten code of acceptable horse management. Questions are increasingly being asked about how some horses are bred, trained, ridden, and cared for. What was acceptable 20 years ago isn't necessarily acceptable today. So what is acceptable? And who decides what is right and wrong? In a world where society's views around the ethics of using animals for sport are posing new questions, how can horse sport evolve to maintain acceptance of the public and protect its social license to operate? And horses we keep for companionship or for therapy, are they immune from abuse? Do our good intentions always translate into good welfare? Today, we have more and more objective evidence about what is good for horses and what is not. Are we basing our views and practices on credible sources of advice based on evidence? What if we could ask the horse, would it be their opinion alone that matters most? How can we understand the horse's perspective here? To both fully understand the difference, we must explore the evidence, taking note of both opinion and experience. To reflect on the question, when does use become abuse?